Halliburton's got the ball. Halliburton rises up. And there's a whistle. Oh, my goodness. Tyrese Halliburton hits a three and is fouled.
You have got to be kidding me.
McConnell underneath the basket. Looking. Toppin in the corner for three.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! OB!
Pacers have it, a chance to tie.
Yeah, Nembhard
hits the three. Nembhard gives Indiana the lead.
Hello and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show. My name is Logan and this is your home for all things blue and gold. And folks, we have ourselves a series as it has begun. The Pacers take game one in Cleveland over the number one seed Cleveland Cavaliers. They make a massive statement in this game, taking down the Cavs on their home floor and stealing home court advantage right out of the gate for this Eastern Conference semifinal series. The Pacers sent a message to the entire Eastern Conference and the league that they are here and they mean business. We're breaking down the big plays, the momentum swings, and what this win means heading into game two. So let's get into it. Again, the number one Cleveland Cavaliers versus the number four Indiana Pacers. And tonight, Sunday, May 6th, the Pacers take down the Cavs 121-112. They will play a game two on Tuesday. Pacers at Cavaliers. It's going to be Tuesday, May 6th at 7 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game three will be at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Cavs will travel to Indianapolis to play these Pacers Friday, May 9th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. Game four, Cavs at Pacers, Sunday, May 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game five will be Pacers at Cavaliers on Tuesday, May 13th, time to be determined on TNT if that game is necessary. Game six, if necessary, Cavs at Pacers, Thursday, May 15th, to be determined, and it will be on ESPN. They do not have a time for that one yet. And then game seven will be Pacers at Cavs, Sunday, May 18th, time and TV to be determined. So that's what the schedule looks like for the rest of this series, and we'll kind of recap that each time that we do one of these game recaps. So this is a game recap for game one. We will have a game two preview that will release on Monday, which will be us talking a little bit. It'll probably be Monday night, and then Tuesday. I hope you guys can give that a listen as you guys are going into work. So I'll try to release that Monday night around probably 8 p.m. or so, but I'm going to try to release this episode sometime tomorrow around 1 p.m., which is Monday, so that you can work and listen to a recap of this series, this game one series win, or sorry, not series win, game one win of the Pacers. Sorry, it's right after the game happened. I'm all over the place with my emotions just because this was an exciting game. And heading into this series, I did feel like the Pacers had a chance. I have predicted the Pacers win this series in 6 games, and tonight was a great start to get that done because now the momentum shifts to the Pacers and they control the home floor advantage, which is massive against a team like Cleveland, who has one of the best arenas and crowds in the NBA. And we will be talking about how that impacted tonight's game. But again, just a quick note is that the preview for game two, again, will be available on Monday night heading into Tuesday morning. So you can give that a listen on your way to work or wherever you might be working on Tuesday. You can also listen to it Monday night if you're up that late. But if you're not, check it out on Tuesday. We're going to release this game one recap, which you're listening to this, so you know when it's been released. But I'm going to try to get this up at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Monday afternoon. So that way you have the rest of the day and then the ride home to listen to this recap. But yeah, game one, big news going into game one. We really didn't have a whole lot of news except for the fact that Darius Garland was questionable heading into the series. Well, game one ended up breaking headlines as Darius Garland missed game one. He had missed games 3 and 4 in that Heat series due to a left big toe sprain. Jared Greenberg, about an hour before the game with NBA TV, reported that there is significant concern from the Cavs. He went through their high-intensity practice on Friday with plans of shutting him down on Saturday as they did their kind of walk through and brush up practice to get ready for game one on Sunday evening. that Darius Garland was planning on playing on Sunday, but because of the high intensity Friday and the swelling on Saturday, and then the continued swelling and concern on Sunday night, tonight, he had major concern that he was going to have to miss this game, and he ends up missing the game. Not ready, as it is a big toe strain. It is going, or sorry, sprain. It is going to be a difficult injury for Darius Garland, somebody that is a shifty point guard, someone that relies heavily on his pace and his ability to move from side to side, plant that foot, plant that toe, push off on that toe. That is a huge problem for somebody that is that quick, because a toe injury can lead to more pressure on the rest of the foot or on the other foot. It's going to be difficult for Darius Garland, I think, to get to 100% until after the season is done, unless the Cavs can somehow rattle off 4 straight here, and then the Boston Knicks series goes to a game 7 where he can get a week. Jared Greenberg did say that if this was the regular season, Darius Garland would more than likely be shut down for at least 1 week, but probably 2 weeks with this injury, and how concerned they are about it. It's something that I think will be nagging for Darius Garland when he does return. I imagine that he'll have to try to work through the pain, however that might be, extra wrap, whatever, painkiller injection, something to try to numb the pain of that toe, because I just feel like that is the one thing that a quick guard cannot have is a lower leg injury, obviously, but especially to the feet, because it just needs rest. There's not going to heal on its own. And having a game or two a day off in between games isn't really going to do much for this toe. If when the Pacers and the Cavs go back to Indy, they do have, let's say, Wednesday, Thursday off. They play Friday, so they'll have 2 days off to try to get Darius Garland back to closer to being more comfortable. But I just feel like there's not enough days in between games where he's ever going to be able to really heal what is going on with this big toe. So this is something that Darius Garland and the Cavs are going to have to deal with over the next couple of games and into the deep runs of the playoffs. If they get there, it's going to be something that is concerning for Cavs fans and the Cavs organization, just because this is not something that he's just going to be able to bounce back from immediately and recover. So we'll be keeping an eye on the injury report with Darius Garland and what comes out of practice tomorrow, Monday, when they kind of do like a walkthrough, and they'll have some media availability tomorrow when they do have that walkthrough leading up into game 2. So it's less than 48 hours that the Cavs have to figure out what's going on with Darius Garland. What does that look like for the starting lineup? Because I've got some interesting notes that I will share with you, how that starting lineup performed with Sam Merrill inserted into that spot where Darius Garland usually occupies. But it was not a good start for Cleveland before the game, and then it really did not start well for this Cavs team in the first half against the Indiana Pacers. Couple other notes that I want to make as I've listened to some of the recap and some of the stuff that's been said. I've listened to a couple of Cavs podcasts live tonight, and then I listened to some of the studio talk that's been happening on NBA TV and TNT, and listening to some of the press conferences. There's a whole lot of blame on missing Darius Garland, but also the Cavs shooting or inability to shoot tonight and hit shots. And that was the reason why many said that the Cavs lost this game. And while, yes, that is indeed a fact from this game where they did not shoot very well, I think the Pacers did a lot of things tonight that really propelled them forward, and I think will give them confidence going into a game 2 situation, where I do feel like the Pacers can really put the pressure on the Cavs to make this a series where their backs are against the wall the whole time. And we'll talk about what my predictions are in Monday night's episode. The game 2 preview will actually talk about my predictions, but you can kind of get a sense of, when we recap this game that happened tonight, you'll get a sense of how I feel and the confidence that I have for this Pacer team going forward against the number 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. So a note that I want to say and really put out there, because it's been a talk, is that the Cavs were not expecting the Pacers to be this good. And the Cavs were not ready for this battle tested Indiana team, that they were caught off guard, that they were shell shocked, that the Pacers really took it to them, because the Cavs have kind of coasted the last 2 or 3 months, and then also got to coast through their first round series because it was the most lopsided win that a team's ever had in a playoff series, when the Cavs swept the Miami Heat 4 games to none. Didn't have to play Darius Garland game 3 or 4, and felt very comfortable, and actually had two of the most lopsided wins in an NBA playoff game in the last 2 games, in game 3 and game 4 against the Heat. So there was a lot of talk about that. And there was a lot of talk about that throughout the game and through halftime shows. And tonight on X, it was just unbearable, because it seemed like everybody was willing to discredit what the Pacers did and give excuses as to why this Cleveland team did not perform to the level in which they have all season. And that being said, I mean, this team started 15-0, and Atkinson had them playing at a rate in which, I mean, it was unsustainable and, quite frankly, historic. And from that point on, they're a great team. They go on another stretch, I think, right after DeAndre Hunter arrives, or right around the time DeAndre Hunter arrives, where they also put on a multi-digit game win streak. And this Cavs team went on many stretches where they just seemed unbeatable. And in the regular season, that can happen, because you get hot, you have these stretches, you have these runs, you have days off in between. They were healthy most of the season, this Cavs team. So they just had it all going. But there was a point in March and April, and we talked about this in our series preview. There was a point where the Cavs did come back to earth a little bit. They were still playing like one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference and in the league, but at least they were coming back down to earth as far as their shooting percentages, their points per game. They weren't defending as well. The bench wasn't performing at a high octane level as it had been throughout the season. They had, players miss games here and there. But as a season like this goes, when you're this talented, when you're running through the league at the rate in which they were running through this league, there is a lot of moments and lulls of a regular season, 82 game season, where you see weaknesses, and some things are exposed, but you also see tremendous strength and the ability to rattle off a 10 or 15 game win streak that they did. And I feel like so much got wrapped into how great their season was. But then again, you think about them in Oklahoma City, and Oklahoma City is going to also, I think, figure out that they aren't as battle tested coming out of their game 1 series. They got eliminated last year in their first round series, where they got bounced out of the playoffs. I feel like both of the number 1 seeds are not battle tested and experienced in the NBA playoffs. And I do feel like that makes them vulnerable. That makes them susceptible to losing games like this. And game 1 is a very difficult game, especially when you don't feel like you've played the same team at all throughout the regular season, which is very rare for teams like the Pacers and the Cavs to go 4 games and not have a feel of what that team is, because in none of these games that the Pacers and Cavs played during the regular season did they have the same personnel or the same strength or same weaknesses. Like, the Pacers have improved tremendously on defense from times when early in the season the Cavs saw them. And then the Cavs improved with DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome going off and going bananas. The Pacers didn't really get to see Evan Mobley a whole ton as far as that defensive prowess, because you did have moments in the season when guys weren't available. Aaron Nesmith missed the first 2 Cavs games. Tyrese misses a game because he gets injured in one of them. There's too many moving parts, but these teams have never seen each other really throughout the season. And you had to go all the way back to last season when at least some of this personnel was existent in these matchups. And so this was a feeling out process. And Greg Anthony made a great point to start the game. These are 2 teams feeling each other out, trying to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are against one another, because sometimes what your strength is against one opponent isn't necessarily strength against another opponent. So, for instance, the Bucks didn't really have the ability to grab a ton of rebounds compared to the Pacers. It was a pretty even split battle there, where the Cavs are a tremendous and gifted rebounding team. They are also a much better defensive team than the Milwaukee Bucks. So that was something that the Pacers had to figure out, is how do they connect, and how do they integrate their offense against a defense that is a top defense in this league and has the best player defensively in this league. So what does that look like? The size of the Cavs is definitely different from the Bucks, because besides Giannis, they weren't really known for their size too much, and the Pacers were able to exploit their defense because they didn't have as much size as the Cavs will have. They also had to worry about a bench that is very efficient and very productive, kind of like what the Pacers bench was last season, especially last postseason. The Cavs have that similar kind of depth that the Pacers do. So what does that look like? What are the defensive assignments, there when the two teams get to their benches? But then, the Cavs have to figure out, what does the Pacers pace look like? What does this much improved defense look like? How does Aaron Nesmith really impact this lineup, and who guards Aaron Nesmith? And you also have to deal with the fact that Aaron Nesmith and Nemhard are a much different player in the playoffs, because they take their game to the next level. They've always struggled with Pascal Siakam defensively ever since he was back with Toronto. So what does that look like? Because they didn't really have much experience the year prior with Pascal, and then Pascal was never with his running mates in this season. So it was like playing Pascal with this brand new team all over again, because the Cavs haven't really seen the Pacers with Pascal at full strength with this rotation, or with these rotations. So there was so much to learn in these first couple of quarters, and I felt like the Pacers handled that a lot better than the Cavaliers did. But I feel like it's because the Cavs, again, coasted through the last 2 or 3 months of the season. They weren't really ever threatened by Boston to lose that number one seed. And while, yes, they were still trying to compete with Oklahoma City for overall home court advantage, which they didn't get, OKC will own home court advantage throughout the whole playoffs, even through the NBA Finals. But with the way that the Cavs looked in Game One, it's going to be a challenge for them to get to the NBA Finals, because I do believe that this Pacers team can run the Cavs out of the playoffs. Even if they were to advance, I'm not sure they're better than Boston. I think Boston wins that series against the Knicks. Are the Cavs able to bounce back from their abysmal performance against them last year in the playoffs, where they only gave them one game of a challenge? Can the Cavs move on to a Boston series and still compete at a high level? And I don't know. The Game One, I think, shows just you can be really good in the regular season, but there are still other really good teams in the NBA playoffs, and this isn't going to be an easy ride for the Cavs all the way to the NBA Finals. That the Pacers, the Knicks, and the Celtics can present challenges to this Cleveland team that they don't necessarily get with the bottom 4 or 5, 6 teams in the Eastern Conference that they've had to play. So we'll see what happens in Game Two. We'll see how the Cavs respond. But the Pacers came out and absolutely delivered a punch early on in this game. But the reason why I've been talking about just how the regular season means nothing, and that when you do kind of coast through these last couple of months, you're not really battle tested, you're not really challenged. So when the Pacers came out and had to go through a challenging series with the Bucks, where they had 2 games where I felt like they definitely could have lost, then it could have made them this a series where it was 6 or 7 games. I felt like the Pacers were in that territory, but ended up pulling it out in 5. The Pacers are much more battle tested, and especially because of their run to the Eastern Conference Final last year, you can put all of that together. And then the fact that the Pacers have always played teams better than them to a very even rate. And I went back and looked. The Pacers are 7-7 against teams better than them in the NBA this year. So that includes the Cavs, the Rockets, the Thunder, Celtics, and Knicks. And actually, they own the winning record over the Cavs and the Celtics, but the Rockets, Thunder and Knicks actually have a better record against the Pacers than the Cavs and Celtics did. So, and again, in those Cavs games, none of these rotations were playing at full strength. So it is an interesting stat, but I think it's worth mentioning because the Pacers again, have always done better as the underdog. Look at last season, they were the 6th seed, and they get all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals against the number 1 seed. And yes, I know the Knicks and Bucks were dinged up, but and now you have Darius Garland missing game 1. But this Pacers team is always going to fight. And I think if you don't watch this team, and if you're listening to this, you're a Cavs fan or an NBA fan in general, and you're just trying to see what the recap is on this, the underestimating of the Pacers comes from the fact that people don't watch the Pacers. And I think if you're not really a huge fan of this style, it can be kind of boring at times because all they do is pass and there's just such equal distribution that there's not like this, Tyrese Halliburton, I would say, is the face of the team. I would say that the second star is Pascal Siakam, but on every night's different. On most nights, you have somebody else leading the charge. So that's what makes this team so dynamic. And I think that's hard for other franchises to wrap their heads around because if you look at every single team that the Pacers are going to play, their number 1 and 2 stars are pretty clear cut, and there's not much argument around, their number 1 and their number 2. So, for instance, if you're looking at the 4 teams that are left in the Eastern Conference, then you can say that the Cavs are probably their 1-2 punches, a combination of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Maybe you could throw in Evan Mobley every once in a while, but not typically. The guys that are going to lead the charge are Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. With the Knicks, it's Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. With the Celtics, it's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. With the Pacers, people will say, well, it's obviously Tyrese and Pascal. Well, there are many games recently that Pascal has not really been as involved as much, where it's been Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Miles Turner, Obi Toppin, like TJ McConnell. I mean, there's just so many different ways in which this team can punch you. And I think that's what makes them so difficult to beat. And I think that's what makes them so difficult to understand. I think that from the outside looking in, that you would say that most teams own the best 2 players in the series going forward, that the top seed will own the better players over Tyrese and over Pascal. But I think because of what Tyrese does offensively, because it's so underrated, his ability to create, I mean, that we'll get into some stats that I find very interesting and I think will at least show you some value. And I know you Pacer fans understand this, but just to confirm just how valuable Tyrese Halliburton can be. And honestly, Miles Turner, very similar in that same discussion of, I think Miles Turner is tremendously underrated just because of how much he impacts the defensive end. And I don't ever think he gets enough credit for the way that he completely changes games. And we'll talk a bit about that as well. But let's talk about Ty in this moment, because I feel like to start out this recap, if I'm pointing to the person that changed the game the most, Donovan Mitchell was great in this game, and we knew he would be, and he always averages right around 30 some points against these Pacers, and he's very difficult to guard, and especially at home, he's going to take advantage of his, just his ability to create and to be able to get to the rim and finish and hit shots. I mean, the guy's a tremendous athlete and a tremendous star in this league. I think the top 10 player, if you're looking at just the teams across the board. I feel like he just has that impact on his team and the league where he's a top 10 player. But Tyrese Halliburton was the best player in this game. And I think people will obviously dislike that idea because, one, he didn't score more than Donovan Mitchell. Two, you didn't really notice the takeover ability until around the 4th quarter when he really started to make some shots. And I think that's what people equate to superstar players and players like Giannis and Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson and Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jokic. When people look at stats and talk about the best players in the league, they want to point to how many points they score. And it's a point-driven league. It is a shooting-driven league. As the league has progressed in this modern era, it's the amount of points that someone has that makes you a better player than someone else. Whereas the traditional point guard isn't really seen as a valuable player in today's game. But the way in which Tyrese plays it, and I love this analysis from Greg Anthony, he said the way that Tyrese plays the game in this modern day reminds him a lot of the way that Magic Johnson and John Stockton impacted games. And if you're getting mentioned with guys like Magic Johnson and with guys like John Stockton. I feel like you've reached a point in your career where you are going to be discussed as one of the, if not the best point guards in this league. And if you look around the league, it's hard to find someone that is a better point guard and distributor than Tyrese Halliburton because of his ability to hang on to the ball, his ability to set up a great shot or to set up a teammate who's going to then set up a great shot. I mean, we've talked about this multiple times. If Tyrese Halliburton ever had a hockey, if the NBA ever went to the hockey assist, Tyrese Halliburton's numbers would just be absolutely through the roof with assist. I mean, just his ability to create open players and open shots and that next pass, it's just I don't think you appreciate it unless you've watched it all year. And that's what Tyrese does. He got voted the most overrated because I think people that understand the game know how valuable he is and they understand his impact on a game. And there are so many basketball players that do not have a high basketball IQ. They just see scoring and humbleness and the ability to just score at will and close out games where I don't think they really see Tyrese doing that. And you've heard the former players like Lou Williams and Chandler Parsons on their, whatever show that is with Michelle Beadle, where they were on NBA TV and both of them were like, I don't even watch the Pacer games. And those are former players. So that's kind of that mindset, right? And if you ask players, I mean, a lot of the other players in the league do not watch basketball. They just don't watch other games. They're just not interested. They live it. They don't have to watch it. And, they watch film and stuff like that. But when they're watching film, that's more about understanding like what they have to do to prepare to beat that other team. They're not watching it for just how great they are and impactful they are for a long stretch of the season. They're watching one particular game or two particular games in which the film crew or a compilation of what this player does. And they understand that they're good because they're having to guard them. But I don't think they're looking at it from a lens of how great is he compared to other players at that moment. And so many players, again, do not and it's funny to say that because they're NBA players and there are successful players that just don't have high basketball IQ. They don't understand what that looks like when somebody's not scoring 30 points a game. Like Tyrese is not that guy that's going to have 30-point games. He just isn't. And I think that's what most of the league consider. If you say, well, who are some of the best players in the league, they're going to name you guys that often have 30-point games. Tyrese is just not in that category because that's just not what he does. He will and can have games like that, but it's not going to be on a regular basis. You're going to see more of Tyrese and as he progresses. And remember, he's still a very young player. He's not even in his prime yet. The guy in the playoffs is just insane. And we're going to talk about Tyler Smith, who, if you know who Tyler is, Tyler Smith, he is Indie Sports Legends, one of the writers there. He's a fantastic follow, and I'm sure all of you guys are following him already, so I don't really have to tell you who he is. But he's done a really great thing here. He's kept the accomplishments on a list. All these things, these history-breaking things that Tyler Smith wrote this about Tyrese Halliburton, and he continues to make things happen and break records. So listen to this, and this is a little bit of a longer list, so bear with me here. But going back to the 2023 season on November 4th, and we're going to start there. Then we're going to go all the way through, and I'll tell you when the 2024-2025 season starts. But you're going to start to see in obviously April and May, you're going to hear more playoff leaning, history-breaking moments that Tyrese has had. But here we go. November 4th, 2023. All right. Halliburton becomes the first player in Pacers NBA history with 40-plus points and 10 assists in a game. November 12th, Halliburton recorded 25 points, 17 assists, and 0 turnovers against the Sixers. He became the third youngest player in NBA history with 25 points, plus 25 points, plus 15 assists with no turnovers, joining Allen Iverson and Chris Paul as the only players to do so. November 14th, Halliburton puts together a 33-point, 15 assists, 0 turnover performance against Philadelphia, becoming just the fourth player in NBA history to have a 30 and 15 and 0 game. So that was 2 days later when they played one of those home and home things series. November 21st, so a week later, Pacers win a wild game in Atlanta, and Halliburton scores 37 points to go along with 16 assists. Halliburton joins James Harden as the only players in NBA history to have 35 plus points, 15 plus assists, and 9 plus threes in a game. Jump ahead to November 30th. And this is when Tyrese was playing out of his mind. And some of it was the in-season tournament and leading up in that huge stretch that he had right before the hamstring injury. But November 30th, at the end of November, Halliburton joined LeBron James and Michael Jordan as the only players in league history to average at least 25 points and 10 assists per game while shooting 50 and 40% from the floor, from three, and from the floor while shooting 50 and 40%. So 50% from the field, 40% from three-point line. That the way that was worded was weird. But November 4th, that was November 30th. December 4th, Halliburton recorded his first career triple-double with 26 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists, and 0 turnovers in a 122-112 win against the Boston Celtics. He became just the third player since the league began tracking turnovers in 77 and 78 to record 25 plus points, 10 plus rebounds, and 10 plus assists in a single game without turning the ball over at age 23 or younger. Tyrese Halliburton on December 28th becomes the first player in NBA history to record 20 plus points, 20 plus assists, and 3 plus three-point made baskets in a game, and also becomes the second player in NBA history to record 20 plus points, 20 assists, and 0 turnovers in a game, joining Chris Paul, 2016. December 30th, Halliburton ties a franchise record with 23 assists and becomes just the third player in NBA history to have consecutive 20-point, 20 assist nights. December 26th through January 3rd, Halliburton puts up 76 assists and 7 turnovers during a 5-game winning streak, becoming the first player ever with that many assists and that few turnovers in a 5-game stretch. January 3rd of 2024, Halliburton puts up 31 points, 12 assists, 5 threes, 3 blocks, and 0 turnovers, joining Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the only players in NBA history with those numbers in a game. January 19th, after missing 5 games and playing for the first time in 11 days, Halliburton returns the action with stat line of 21 points, 7 assists, and 0 turnovers. It's already the 6th game of his career with 20 plus points, 15 plus assists, and 0 turnovers, the most in NBA history. Halliburton is named an all-star starter on January 25th, becoming the 4th Pacer to ever receive this honor. He joins Reggie Miller, Jermaine O'Neal, and Paul George. April 5th, Halliburton sets the all-time Pacers franchise record for assists in a season. The record was previously held by Mark Jackson, who held the record with 713 assists back in 1998. April 14th, Halliburton finished the regular season as one of the just 3 players in NBA history to make at least 195 three-pointers and record 750 more assists in one season. April 26th, Halliburton becomes just the 4th Pacer to ever record a triple-double in a playoff game. He also recorded the 2nd most assists in franchise history for a playoff game. April 28th, Halliburton joined Oscar Robinson as the only players in NBA history to average 15 plus points, 10 plus assists, and 5 plus rebounds in their first 4 career playoff games. May 10th, Halliburton becomes the 5th player in NBA history to record 30 plus points and 6 plus threes in back-to-back postseason games. May 21st, Halliburton ties the NBA record for most threes in a conference finals debut with 6. May 22nd, Halliburton is named to an All-NBA third team. It's the 12th time a Pacer has been named to an All-NBA team in franchise history. Halliburton joined Magic Johnson, John Stockton, Steve Nash, and James Harden as the only All-NBA players to lead the league in assists and shoot 60% true shooting percentage in a season. Moving ahead to 2024-2025 season. He was awful the first half of the season, so we're going to jump all the way to January 2nd. Halliburton becomes, and I wouldn't say awful, I would say Tyrese was not as good. I think the confidence and then just being worn out. I mean, the guy went from Eastern Conference Finals to Olympics, even though he didn't play much in the games, obviously. He did perform in the Olympics, had to train, had to do all of that. And then with all the hype surrounding him, and just the offseason that he had. Then he went right into training with the team when they were with Pascal in Orlando. So, I mean, the guy's been working nonstop. So obviously there was going to be a little bit of a tail off, and there was. I mean, the first couple of months, again, not awful, just not great. He was just not shooting the ball very well. And that was really it. He just had no confidence shooting the basketball. Wasn't like he wasn't creating. I mean, this team was 10 and 15 at one point, but he was still creating chances. He was still reasons why they would win some of those games. I would say he wasn't awful. That was an exaggeration and wrong. But in 2025, January 2nd, Halliburton becomes the first player in NBA history to record 30 plus points, 15 plus assists, 0 turnovers, and 5 plus threes in a single game. He also becomes the first player in NBA history to go for a 30, 15, and 0 in multiple games. March 2nd, Halliburton becomes the first player in NBA history to record 500 assists before 100 turnovers in a single season. that's insane. Like, this dude is historic to the max. We still have 4 more to go. 4 more? Yeah, 4 more to go. April 2nd, Halliburton becomes the all-NBA, all-time NBA leader in games with 20 plus points, 10 plus assists, and 0 turnovers at 14. That's how many games that he's had at that level, that 20, 10, and 0 turnovers. He did that at the age of 25. That's crazy because he's not even in his prime yet, and he's already become the all-time NBA leader in games of 20 plus points, 10 plus assists, and 0 turnovers. He leads that with 14. And I don't know if there's ever anybody that's going to get close to that, because he's just going to keep going. And this is, I mean, it's just incredible at this point. Halliburton on April 27th becomes one of 9 players in NBA history to begin the playoffs with 4 straight points and assist double doubles. So that's a wild stat too, just because of how good some of those players are on that list. April 29th, in the first round series win over Milwaukee, Halliburton became just the second player to log an assist rate of over 45% and a turnover rate below 12% during a 5-game playoff run. And then this one is one that I think just blew my mind. This was yesterday. May 4th, Halliburton becomes the first player in NBA history to reach 70 plus assists, 13 plus threes, and 7 blocks in any 6-game stretch in the playoffs. Halliburton also becomes just the third player in the last 60 years to total 100 plus points, 70 plus assists, and 35 plus rebounds through 6 games of a single playoff run. The things that he is doing and the things that he has done are just, I think, unfathomable for a fan unless you listen to that list that I just read off. And I know that was very long-winded and a lot for so thanks for hanging in if you did. But Tyler Smith, thanks for writing that up. That was tremendous. It just, I can't even put into words how special this player is. And I think that he's the most underrated player in this league when you're talking about top players in this league. So I'm going to flip the script on that athletic survey poll, whatever it was, 90 plus some odd anonymous players that were probably, 15 of them were Bucks players and 15 of them were Knicks players. And that's almost a third of the people who voted. But I just want to emphasize how special Tyrese Halliburton is. I think Pacer fans know this. And there's just nothing I can say about the guy that really just puts any kind of negative light on who he is as a person, who he is as a player. Does he do some frustrating things? Yeah, all players do. But just this guy is unbelievable. I can't believe the Pacers have somebody like this who is constantly setting NBA records and all-time history records. And in the names of like Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Magic Johnson, when you're in conversations with those guys constantly, it's just it's got to be an incredible feeling. But it's going to propel your team to be one of the top teams in this league, and that's what Halliburton has done. So Halliburton in this game scored 22 points, including a go-ahead 3-pointer midway through the fourth that really put the Pacers in the driver's seat, and they went on this run to end the game that we'll talk about later. He had 13 assists, made tons of great defensive plays. I mean, you go up and down the game, play by play on ESPN, and just different, had his hands in different things, blocked a couple of shots. He just did everything, and he rebounds well. It just in this one, and it is special to watch, and I'm glad that the Pacers have a healthy Tyrese Halliburton for this playoff run. He had just one turnover too, mind you. And the one turnover, I mean, it wasn't something that I think he makes that mistake again. Like, it just, I feel like he could have had the 0 turnovers. And the fact that somebody can go through a playoff game when a team has 17 turnovers in total and he's not included in just one and should have been 0, you're going to be hard pressed to find some other player throughout history that has done that and has done that at multiple games in the playoffs. He's special. He is a special player. And so, I think the success that the Pacers had obviously was because of Tyrese and the way that he closed out that game. He ignites the 15-4 run at the end of the fourth quarter to put this on ice. His standout defensive plays that really struck a chord with me was the block on a 3-point attempt by Strus with 2:12 left that converted into a layup and gave them a 10-point lead. His assist led to 34 points, including 8 3-pointers. And that's what I mean by just making everybody around him much better, because there are so many great looks that he provides to Nesmith and Nembhard, Siakam and Turner, Toppin, Jarris, Ben Shepherd, Ben Mathurin. I mean, he just sets all these guys up for success. And that's why they shoot at such a high clip, because they are so wide open that they are able to hit a high percentage like they did in this game. So let's talk about those key moments. We're going to shift our attention to more of a recap of things that happened in this game. It was a game that really, and I don't want it to sound cliche, it was a game of runs. It truly was. The Pacers come out in the first quarter and make a statement. They end the first quarter on a 10-0 run. They lead at the end of the first quarter 36-25. You felt really good by just the way that the Pacers competed in that first quarter. There were moments early on where they led by 4 or 6, but really kept control of the first quarter and then bust out into that 11-point lead by the end of the first. And the Cavs just looked disoriented. I mean, they look like a team that was not really ready for a big punch to be thrown. And the Pacers threw their first big punch and landed it right at the end of the first quarter. That building got quiet. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop at the end of that first quarter because of the run that the Pacers went on. And I think that really set the course for the rest of the game. Yes, there would be runs by the Cavs, but I felt like every time there was a huge run or a Cavalanche, as they call it, the Pacers would eventually respond and hit back hard. And that's so important for this Pacers team, who last year, I mean, they would not win games on the road. I think they won 2 road games last year. One was a Game 2 win against the Milwaukee Bucks last year in that first round series, and then the Game 7 win in the Garden when the Knicks basically fell apart at the seams. Pacers stomp all over them in the Garden and decisive. They played the Boston Celtics really well in the first 2 games at the Garden, but just didn't have enough because of the Tyrese Halliburton injury, but also the fact that the Pacers just didn't close out game 1. This was the true test, right? This is what you wanted to see from the Pacers, was their ability to not only respond to punches, because that's what they did all last season and last postseason, and then again in this season. You wanted to see them get down, get close to out, but then punch back and take advantage and then grab control again. Because that's something that this Pacers team, because they're a younger team, they haven't really figured that out yet. They hadn't gotten into these postseason games or these big games and been able to, even in games that they shouldn't have been in, like they have a hard time at times closing games out. And part of that's just due in the fact that they don't really have this is the one thing I think that you could kind of ding the Pacers with, is like they don't really have the closer. Like, most teams have the big time closer and it's usually their best player. Whereas I think that's where the Pacers can struggle at times because it can be their best player can be anybody for any game, and every game could be different. So in this one, I think you look at Andrew Nemhard, Neesmith, and Tyrese, who were having those games where they could close it out. But then again, you're trying to get everybody involved. And Tyrese is not typically one that's going to just start to take over a game and ball goes to him 20 times at the end in the fourth quarter, where he's the one that you live and die by him. He's just not that kind of player. However, that being said, this was the first time I can truly remember in a playoff game. And because he wasn't as healthy last year, but this is the first time that I can remember where he just looked like he was going to take over this game and win this ball game for the Pacers. And he did. But it all started with that first quarter statement is we're here, we're ready. We don't care who we're playing. We're going to play the team in front of us, whether that includes Darius Garland or not. We're going to be competitive. And that's huge because this Pacer team struggles at times with starts because of the immaturity. They don't come out. They come out very lackadaisical, like we own this. And I'm worried about that in game 2. Like that will be something that we talk about in the game 2 preview is the fact that every time that the Pacers do something tremendously well, they kind of take a step back because of their youth. They just let off the gas and then let a team back into a game or a series. So that's the next growth point. But this is something I said on Twitter. Every time the Pacers are approached with a new challenge, they figure it out, and they have figured it out. Like, I mean, you go all the way back, I guess, even to the front office even making these decisions or the coaching making these decisions. The fact that they're buying on players or buying low on players that were given up or abandoned, turning into a really good team. Now this really good team is making a playoff push. We need an extra level. We need a veteran. Let's go get that. Pascal Siakam comes. It's a little bit of a rough go at the beginning with Pascal because it's a new system. And how do we figure out how Tyrese and Pascal play together? You get into the playoffs. That first game, you get absolutely smacked because you've never been in the playoffs. You have a really horrible first half, but then you have a really good second half. Pascal Siakam carries you through the first 2 games as he needed to. They win game 2 and answer to those Bucks. And yes, they don't have Giannis. So yes, the Bucks are playing undermanned. The Pacers take advantage of that. They win it in 6. They head off to New York, who is one of the hottest teams in the league at that point. Yes, they have injuries that they're dealing with Mitchell Robinson, right? And Jalen Brunson eventually gets hurt. Anunoby gets hurt. I mean, they just Hartenstein is trying to carry the load. Like Hart trying to carry the load. DiVincenzo having some really good seasons. They don't have a bench, but the Knicks go up 2-0 on the Pacers. It felt like they were in command of that series. And then in game 3, Andrew Nemhard hits a late game. I think it was a lead at that point that ended up being the game winner because of it propelling them to win the game 3. They go in, they win game 4. The Pacers are backs to the wall in game 7, I guess you could say, because it's game 7 in the Garden, but you felt pretty good because of the injuries that were happening around the Knicks. The Pacers take advantage there. So they respond, they win that series. Game 1 in Boston, they came out, were the better team, and lose it at the end on some questionable ball ball management by the Pacers. But it just, the Pacers have constantly responded. And then you start this season 10-15. They then respond and are one of the best teams in the NBA over the last, 50 some games. So this Pacer team has always risen to the challenge presented to them. Game 1 in the Eastern Conference semifinals in enemy territory against one of the best teams, if not the best teams in the league, on their home floor in a ruckus crowd with a crazy PA announcer that I have to hear him say 3 as loud as he possibly can for any more of this series. It's going to drive me nuts. The Pacers took care of business, and they answered every single run that the Cavs had with a run of their own. And that is maturity. That's called growth. That's called this team is really, really good and ready and battle tested and a contender. I would put the Pacers in the category. They are contenders for an NBA final. And they have shown that time and time again. And I think this game has been their we've arrived, we're ready. Do they make it this year? I don't know. They've got really good teams ahead of them. They still have this Cavs team they have to deal with, who is a very good team, who could run off 4 straight wins. And I could see it. But I just feel like the way that the Pacers have played, the way that they're playing, the experience that they have now, the dogs that they have, this team is ready for another deep playoff run. And game one proved it. Quarter one in game one was a statement. 7-2 run to start the second quarter, too, by the Pacers. So they're off flying. They've got a really good lead. I felt very comfortable where they were. I was like, man, they're going to take this 10 to 12 point lead into the half. This is going to be great. But then the Cavs start to cut down that lead, start to make some big shots. You get more shots coming. Donovan Mitchell starts to get way more involved, and he's having an incredible half. He had an incredible game. I mean, this guy is a force to be reckoned with. We've known this for a very long time. He's one of the best players in this league, and he seems hungry. He's never made it past this semifinal round in the teams that he's been in. Kenny Atkinson, I don't think had ever made it out of the first round, if I'm not mistaken, or if he had, he's only made it to the second round. I can't remember what that is, exactly that is, that story line, but he's not had tremendous success in the playoffs, and neither has Donovan Mitchell. He's one of the best scorers in the playoffs, but he's not had winning success. But this Cavs team is probably the best shot that he's ever had. And this was a Cavs team that was really, I mean, people were talking about tearing it up and kind of restarting it after last year's performance. They thought, if the Cavs have another season where they're the 5-4, 5-6 seed, that Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell just can't work together. They were thinking about after this year, it could be the end of it, but they come out and they're one of the best teams in the league. So the Cavs have answered in their own way and have, I think, outperformed expectations. And maybe that has something to do with the way that they came into game one, where they thought they could sit Darius Garland and have a game and take advantage of this series and go to Gamebridge at least up 2-0 on the Pacers. But that's just not the case. And I know Darius Garland is dealing with a very difficult injury, but I do feel like the Cavs felt they were deep enough to at least knock the Pacers out, and they almost did, right? So in the third quarter, the Pacers come out in the third on a nice run, 13-5 run to start the third, push the lead to a 12-point lead, 80-68. I felt great, right? I was like, even if the Cavs throw a big punch, they go on their own 8-0 run, they're still down by 4. And then the Pacers will just answer that one. I felt good about that. Well, 8-point lead and they do, here it is, 8-point lead, right? They get it down to an 8-point lead, or a deficit, I guess, you're the Cavs, with 5:25 left in the third, and then the Cavs get hot. And then you start to see all the three-pointers flying, and you're like, oh, no, not this. And then Donovan Mitchell's getting to the rim at will, dunking and laying things up and getting fouled, and ones, and Ty Jerome's involved, and Strus is involved, and Merrill's involved. Jared Allen gets it going. Mobley, like, it was just everybody at that point. It was like, oh no, here comes the Cavaliers they like to talk about. So the Cavs get hot. Their bench unit's great. The Pacers bench unit sucks during this stretch, and the Cavs go on that 13-0 run, and they get their lead, the first lead for a while. The Cavs do, and that puts a lot of pressure on the Pacers because you could kind of feel it coming unraveled for the Pacers. And this is when I started to feel like, man, they had played so well for 2.5 quarters, and all of a sudden this thing's going to come unraveled. The Cavs are going to hit a bunch of shots because I predicted the Cavs to win this game one. And I kind of felt like this might be the case. The Pacers will come out with a huge punch, and then the Cavs will settle down and get into the groove. And they're never out of games. Like when it was a 12-point lead for the Pacers in the third quarter, I know there were some people on X that were like, oh, the Pacers really starting to get away from them. I was like, it takes them 3 or 4 possessions. They're right back in it, and then maybe even have the lead. So a lead is not safe. This Cavs team can probably score 12 or 14 points in a minute without even blinking. So they're kind of like that Celtics team last year, where they can just hit so many threes and cause so many issues for the Pacers because of their depth and their ability to shoot and knock down threes. But yeah, the Cavs third quarter make that run, and I thought that was where the Pacers, that it was still going to be a close game, but that's where the Pacers kind of lost it. And we could have looked back if the Pacers had lost this game and said that's where the Pacers truly lost the game, is when they let the Cavs come scorching back into the game. They actually get up by 4 at that point, 88-84. And then a big corner three from Benedict Mathurin, then followed up by a block later on in that quarter. The Pacers finally started to feel like, okay, this is the Pacer. We got to feel good about that. I think the block was actually in the fourth, if I can remember. But there was a huge block by Benedict Mathurin late in the game. Yeah, I think it's the fourth, that just puts this game back into the control of the Pacers. And the last 2 minutes of the third, and then the last 7 minutes of the fourth, the Pacers answered those big time runs that the Cavs were on, or even answered the blow to blow that it came down to in the fourth. The Pacers outscore the Cavs 8-2 in the last 2 minutes of the third, and then the last 7 minutes of the game, the Pacers outscore the Cavs 20-10. So again, like I said, these Pacers just kept answering and answering and answering. The Cavs led at the end of the fourth, 102-101. And then the last 7 minutes, the Pacers just look like the better team. They looked like the most experienced team. They looked like the better team. They looked like they weren't going to give control back to the Cavs at all. Like, I even tweeted, I was like, you're going to have one more punch by the Cavs, but it never came. Like, the last 7 minutes, there was nothing going for the Cavs, and it was all Pacers. And that is something that, so many talk about, like, the concerns that maybe the Cavs have after this game. And yes, they can point to a poor shooting and an excellent shooting night for the Pacers as the reason why this game wasn't a little closer at the end. And I agree with that to an extent. But you're always going to have poor shooting nights. You're going to have great shooting nights. And that's just kind of the way that the NBA works and these series work. Like, the Pacers are going to lose a game in the series, I believe. And I think it'll come down to the fact that the Cavs just shoot the ball better and they hit more threes. And that's something the Cavs can do in bunches, which is why I think that I wouldn't even be shocked if it was a 5 or 6 game Cavs series win. But I also wouldn't be shocked if the Cavs stay cold and the Pacers win it in 5 or 6. So things like this can happen, especially when you rely so heavily on the 3-point shot as the Cavs do. And to be honest with you, they've not proven yet that they can shoot at that clip in the postseason. Yes, they play well against the Miami Heat and shoot at a high clip there, but so far, not so good. And it's easier to shoot at home. But the Cavs were just abysmal from 3. And they're not really a team besides Donovan Mitchell that is going to take you to the rack. Once the shooting isn't there, you pretty much can eliminate Strus, Merrill, even DeAndre Hunter. Like, those are guys that just basically only shoot threes. I mean, those guys don't really take off towards the basket at all. So you don't really have to worry about those 3. If those 3 aren't hitting shots, they lose depth very quickly, and they're not good defenders. So, I mean, DeAndre Hunter is serviceable more so than I think the other 2. I think Strus actually looked bad in this game, and Merrill can't guard anybody. So, I think the Pacers present quite a challenge for this Cavs team defensively. Even though they're a good defensive unit, I don't think that they've got that guy except for Evan Mobley. I don't feel like they have a guy that's going to stop someone. So, a lockdown defender, a guard, where Andrew Nembhard can do that. Aaron Nesmith at times can do that. So it was all very interesting, but the Pacers, just took control in that fourth quarter and never let up. At the end of that fourth quarter, it felt all Pacers all the time, that the Pacers were just going to run away with it, and they did. So, looking at the game, what went right for the Pacers, and I have on YouTube, I have a rundown of what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about the Cavs shooting here, because while the Pacers started hot and the Pacers shot it extremely well. So listen to this. Let's compare the two. Pacers, field goals, 44 of 83. That's a 53% from the field. They were 19 of 36 from three-point land, 52%, which you probably won't shoot like that again the rest of the series, but I'm not thinking that they'll ever shoot less than 40. At the rate in which they're shooting it right now, I mean, yeah, they could have those one-off games, but the Pacers, I mean, they're shooting the ball really well from three. So I would not be surprised if that confidence carries over into the next couple of games as well. And that's even with having Tyrese shoot 2 of 6, which wasn't great. And when you take out Ty's 2 of 6, and if you take out some of the other performances that bench players had, or even Miles Turner, then I mean they shoot even better, right? So it I was really impressed with the Pacers' ability to shoot. I think Miles was not as high percent. Yeah, well, he was only 1 of 3. So he was 1 of 3, and Ty was 2 of 6. So they both shot 33%. They're better 3-point shooters than that. I'd expect Miles to hit 2 of 3 usually. But again, there's nights where he's 1 of 3, and that's just what happens. But yeah, I mean, those two didn't shoot the ball, and those are probably two of their best 3-point shooters. They didn't shoot the ball as well. They got tremendous shooting nights from Neesmith, from Nemhard, from Benedict Mathurin. Neesmith, Nemhard, and Mathurin. They were 4, 9, 12. Those three were 12 of 17 from 3-point land. That's crazy. I mean, those three shot the ball so well. And that was the big difference. I mean, the Pacers shot so well from 3-point land. And the Cavs, who are one of the best 3-point shooting teams in this league, their shooting struggles were glaring in this game. 9 for 38 from 3, which is 23%. They won't shoot 23% again. Like they'll be better than that. 45 of 98, which was a 45.9% from the field, which is good, but not better than the Pacers. Not great, right? Very on par or average. So this Cavs team truly did struggle, and they rely so much on 3-pointers. And to get 15 more shots than what the Pacers got, you would have felt very comfortable if you had read that the Cavs outshot the Pacers by 15. You, as a Cavs fan, if you only read that number where the Cavs shot 15 more shots than the Pacers, you'd have felt like the Cavs won by at least 10 because of how much they shoot 3-pointers. And you would expect this team to hit at least 33, 34, 35, even on a cold night. I mean, they were ice cold. Every time they shot it, I was like, oh, wow, that's not in. That's not. I mean, it started to get to a point where they were shooting threes. I'm like, well, get ready to rebound it, which the Pacers didn't do well at all either on the offensive side. So, yeah, I mean, I thought the Cavs' shooting struggles were a huge aspect as to why they lost this game. But give credit to the ND defense. Give credit to the Pacers' ability to play at their pace, where I felt like there were times where the Cavs were forcing up shots. One particular, I definitely remember, I believe it was Ty Jerome, was out on a fast break. And it was just in that fourth quarter where it was back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But there were I remember, I think there was one by Strus as well and DeAndre Hunter where they forced up threes because it was just it was in pace of play, but it was favoring the Pacers. It was going really quick. I feel like the Cavs do have good pace, but I feel like, and it might not necessarily show too much obviously in the season preview, I think it was like 0.1 off of the pace. I think they were 99.8 and 99.7 or something like that, the Pacers and Cavs. So they were right neck and neck pace wise. But I think if you look at the way that the Pacers have played in the playoffs and how much quicker they've played, I actually think that the faster pace actually is a bigger advantage for the Pacers. And I think you saw that because it seemed to have hurried a lot of shots, and 3-point shooters are better 3-point shooters when it's not in a hurried manner. And I think that's where the Cavs kind of lost it, where they weren't as effective because your legs are tired. You're running back and forth. You're trying to keep up with the Pacers' pace. And because the Cavs are used to playing teams with slower pace, they're able to play better against those teams, I think, because they have the legs and they're shooting the ball well. Well, this isn't the case with the Pacers. You've got to go. And when you're missing shots, that will play into the hand of a team that's trying to play quickly. So again, I think there's just so much going on in the benefit of the Pacers that I think helped them, especially towards the end of the game, close this out. Looking at the players that were a big difference in this game, playoff Drew, 52.7% from the 3-point line over the last 2 years, 52.2% from the field for Andrew Nembhard in the last couple of years. So playoff Drew's a thing. He shoots at a high clip in the playoffs, which is really weird because he's an under a 30% shooter for three in this last regular season. So he's not like a great 3-point shooter, but for some reason in the playoffs, he turns into Ray Allen. I don't know. I think it's just it's that competitiveness. And people say, well, it's fluky. I'm like, no, the last 2 years, he asked the Knicks how that's gone for them. I mean, he hits a different level. And then Aaron Nesmith elevates to an even higher percentage than what he typically shoots. And he's usually a pretty good high percentage 3-point shooter and field goal percent. And he's lethal. So he's 54.5% from three this postseason. This postseason, he's hit 33 of 60 attempts from deep. So that's been a big thing for the Pacers. And that was one of the best games those two have played collectively, I think, in a Pacers uniform. They were both really good in this game. Playoff Drew also might have had an impact on Donovan Mitchell going 1 from 11 from the 3-point line. He hit 1 3-pointer. And I think that's because he's not getting a lot of open shots with Nembhard on him from deep. His advantage was taking a smaller Nembhard down to the paint and finishing there. Because I do believe Mitchell's stronger than him. And it's harder for Drew to stop him around the rim. Miles Turner, defensive presence, you saw it when he went out and they were playing that small ball 5 where it was Obi Toppin and Pascal. Thomas Bryant doesn't check in until halfway through the third quarter or even towards the end of the third quarter. And he honestly stabilized it. When they were going on that huge run, it was honestly Thomas Bryant and Benedict Mathurin that put a halt to what the Cavs were doing. And Thomas Bryant big time, because even just being out there, they weren't able to get to the rim as effectively against TB. And Thomas had I think he's played 6 minutes. He had some great minutes in that stretch. He had only one bad play he kind of fell asleep and turned to, I think it was Nembhard or McConnell, turned to throw it to them. And Strus was right there and knocked it out of bounds off of Thomas. But Miles, I mean, you see just how much he changed. And this is what I wanted to talk about when I was talking about at the top of the show with Halliburton is I think Miles is also criminally underrated just by the fact that he's going to get you 12 to 15 points usually a night, but he's also going to save you about 10 to 15 points a night. So, I mean, when you look at it and you might say, well, his plus minus doesn't really say that, but there's just so much that he does to change a game defensively, even in the thought process of going to the rim. He changes the ability of guys to finish around the rim. He changes their shots. He's altering their shots. He gets them in weird positions and they're difficult shots to make around Miles. And his presence alone is something that propels this team to a whole different level. And when he's out, you notice a difference. This is where I tweeted this too. This is where I think they miss another rim protector, especially when it's just Toppin and Pascal. They miss Isaiah Jackson, and Isaiah is not an offensive threat at all, really, besides the lobs and the putbacks and just the offensive rebounding abilities that he had. But having another shot blocker out there is just huge. And as athletic and good defensively as Isaiah Jackson is, they miss that. Because he at least can protect the rim like Miles. I mean, Miles is better, obviously, but I think Isaiah was a pretty good defensive guy around the rim because of his ability to block shots and just cause problems because he's so lengthy. And then we'll switch to the bench. This was a big key for me. can the Pacers bench at least keep up with the Cavs bench? Because the Cavs bench is 2 players that I believe could be all-stars if they were in starting lineups, in Ty Jerome and DeAndre Hunter. And for the most part, the Pacers kept at least DeAndre Hunter pretty quiet. Ty Jerome had a pretty decent night, but he wasn't like extraordinary. So Ty Jerome had, on 8 of 20 shooting, he had 21 points. So he shot at a high volume and did not hit a lot of his shots. He shot 40%. And DeAndre Hunter, he only added 11 points, and he's somebody that can easily score 15 to 20. So they didn't really get the production out of Hunter as much. And then without Darius Garland, that three-headed monster we talked about, where they got to slow down one of Darius Garland, Ty, or Donovan. Like, you got to slow one of them down pretty good to really stand a chance in the series. So you take Darius out of the equation because he was hurt, and then you also you kept Jerome at bay somewhat, because I think in this kind of game where they didn't have Darius Garland, they needed Ty Jerome to have more of a 25, maybe even closer to a 30-point game to really propel them, because nobody else was really doing anything else, besides Evan Mobley, who had 20. So they really needed him to step up the game even more, but I just don't think he could have gotten to that level because he just wasn't shooting very well. So the Pacers did really well, I think. I mean, as far as just the keys to the game that I had going into this one, I felt like they did well to keep the big threats somewhat close to, and guarding them. And I think Donovan could have had a better game, even though he, that's crazy to say that because the guy scored 33 points, but he was 1 of 11 from 3. I mean, this was one of those games where I almost felt like he could have had 40, 45, 50. Like that's how good he was around the rim. But man, was he just not a threat at all from beyond the arc. The bench, again, like I said, the Pacers bench kept up with him. They were outscored in bench points, but the starters were better than their starters. So I think that helped keep it even keel and a lot better than their starters, which I wanted to talk about a little bit here, because this Cavs starting lineup, right, without Darius Garland, I was interested to see how they perform plus minus. So if you look at the lineup that had Donovan Mitchell, that had Sam Merrill, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Strus, I wanted to know, how did they perform, because this was your starting unit, and I had some suspicion that the Pacers would be good against this lineup, because I do think, and this is a big advantage, and a lot of people talked about this too. I think that the 4-5 matchups for Cleveland are pretty difficult in this series, because Pascal and Miles create problems for bigger people. Like, their bigs are your typical bigs, and while Mobley can shoot the three, he's not really looking for it a whole ton. So he plays a lot around the rim and mid-range, and the hook shots and the post ups. And Jared Allen's not going to shoot threes, so that really takes away that, and really his ability is to get lobs and putbacks. So they're not really offensive minded, right? Whereas Pascal and Miles are offensive minded players, but at least both are good defensively, and Miles is really good defensively. So it created, I think, it's the most intriguing of the matchups are those two. Those 4 guys, because they tried to put Mobley on Turner and Jared Allen on Pascal some. And then you would see other times where Mobley was trying to guard Miles or Pascal, and it really they're trying to figure out who do they have more focus on? Do they try to stop Pascal more, or do they try to stop Miles more? And in this one, it had to be Pascal, because Miles, up until a point, was not shooting as well. So it was really like pick your poison, and it is continuing to be pick your poison with these 4. I personally, if I'm the Cavs, I'm looking at that lineup saying, do we have concern that maybe Jared Allen and Evan Mobley can't play together against these two? Because I feel like they could have gone a little bit smaller at times, like with Okoro and Mobley or Okoro and Allen, because I feel like that's or even Dean Wade, but Dean Wade can't guard Pascal. I think Pascal was or over their history or something. Pascal when matched up against him, he's like an 11 for 13 average in 48 minutes would be. So Pascal can just score at will against Dean Wade. So I don't know. I just feel like the Cavs have lineups that are good, but I don't know if they're conducive and can effectively stop a Pacers team from scoring. Because again, let's read these stats. Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, Strus, Merrill, and Mobley is who they started with. They were a minus 11 in this game. 3-point percentage, they were 27%. Field goal percentage, they shot at 50%, so better. But they really, and they played 10 minutes together. They really, and I think that's where you see it. I mean, they've only played 10 minutes together. They did kind of go away from that because it wasn't working as well, especially when they were trying to come from behind. You can't really have both of them out there together. And if you go back and watch the tape of the first half, I was watching them just because I was interested to see what that looked like. They look so disoriented defensively against the Pacers. Like the Pacers offense caused so many problems for those two. And especially on screens, the fours and the fives kept getting mixed up because Rick Carlisle is a genius. He threw like double picks and flares at them. And flares are difficult because you got to have somebody can pass, but Tyrese can pass really well, and so can Nemhard. And you have two ball handlers, and you have 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that can hit threes, right? And the whole starting lineup can stretch you. So it's a chaotic offense to try to defend, especially when you've got two traditionally sized bigs and traditionally styled players and defenders. Because Jared Allen's not really interested in going out on the perimeter, and Mobley tried to go out on the perimeter, but you just saw that was just not working very well for him. And then they're getting screened and they're having to guard the guards, and they were like switching everything. There were so many times where Mobley was out on Tyrese or Jarrett was out on Nemhard. I was like, what is happening? Like, why are they switching? And then they went into a zone for a little bit, but then got pulled right back out of it because the Pacers just kept exploiting that, where the matchups were just a disaster. So if I'm a Cavs fan, while I know this defense was good, I think what I would say is they were good in the regular season because the regular season isn't as intense and there's not much of a focus as exploiting it because you got so many games you got to prepare for, right? So you're not as in tune and as focused as you are in a series where that's all you have to worry about is one opponent and you can focus on what you can do to exploit them. I feel like the Pacers have found something where there's so many screening actions. I mean, look at go. There's a third quarter possession. I believe it was TJ McConnell, Nemhard. I want to say Matherin, Pascal, and Obi. I think it was those 5. Where even though action away from the ball, there were so many screens and cuts off of screens and weird angles that the Pacers were running off ball while Nemhard's trying to distribute. And they're just and it confused them completely. They lost. I think ended up losing Matherin, and Matherin ends up hitting Obi for a 3. I think it was, but there's just moments in these games. Just watch it next time because they're going to do it again in the game, or go back and watch game 1 highlights. Watch how many times there's movement away from the ball and movement at the ball, and it confuses the Cleveland defense. There early on, there's one especially where Jared Allen gets double screened and Mobley gets kind of caught in no man's land, and all of a sudden, and Nemhard gets free, and that's when I think he hits his first 3. He gets free off of a flare screen, and Pascal hits him, or Tyrese hits him on a skip pass, and there's this point where like I think it was Mobley or it was out, one of the two bigs just looked totally defeated. Like I think it was Jared Allen. He just looks at Nemhard and just is like, I'm not even putting a hand up because I got so lost on what was happening that this is embarrassing. And there were many times like that. There are even times where the offense they were running into each other, like the Pacers just put the Cavs in totally difficult spots. And I think that's where the Pacers really benefit, is just the switching that they can do. And if the Cavs are going to switch, I mean, go look at the fourth quarter, for instance. They were switching everything because Jared Allen, I think 3 or 4 times ended up on Tyrese. And then they just clear out that side, that strong side, and he just goes to work on Jared Allen. And it takes a couple seconds, but I mean, the step back 3, and then the step back that he got to the rim, and then there's the step back where he got to the step back, went around him. He gets kind of stuck. He stops the ball, stops dribbling. He's got really nowhere to go, and Jared Allen is as closest to him as possible. And Tyrese kind of gives this up and under, and then he goes up for that layup where he just stretches out. And I mean, he's 6'5", so he can cover a lot of ground and lays it up. And it's just devastating blow after devastating blow. And it was all Tyrese in that fourth quarter on Jared Allen. I mean, Jared Allen was the one getting victimized by Tyrese Halliburton in the fourth. So it was, again, the Pacers' ability to expose that starting lineup is huge for me, because then they have to adjust. And when they do adjust, they lose a lot of things when they have to go with just one big. Obviously, defensively, they're not as strong. Okoro's not really a good offensive threat. Dean Wade's not really going to hurt you offensively. They get kind of stuck. They're like, okay, well, now we got to make a decision. Like, do we sit both Allen and Mobley? Because that's where we're most effective, or had been most effective. Now they're having to scramble and try to figure out what lineups work together. Honestly, the Okoro, Jared Allen, or Okoro and Mobley matchup, I think, works better for them. So we'll see going forward. But this is the second series in a row where the Pacers bigs have caused so many matchup issues. And that's where I think the Pacers have quite the advantage. Biggest thing, though, coming out of this for the Pacers, I would say that you would have some concerns about, because besides the third quarter big time run, the Pacers pretty much controlled this game. If you look at the runs that they made to answer, the biggest thing for me, if I'm a Pacers fan, looking at this, and I mean, I'm obviously a Pacers fan, but looking at this as a Pacers fan, I think the thing you got to be concerned about: turnovers, 17 turnovers. So that's not good. The Pacers don't ever turn the ball over that much. So that was weird. And that can't happen in game 2 or in the rest of the series or going forward. You cannot have 17 turnovers. I don't care if you're playing on the road. Offensive rebounds. This has always been a struggle for the Pacers. They're one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the league. That's never really improved at all. That, again, is just size, and they get stuck under the rim so much. Like, it's always those long rebounds that they get. That's frustrating, because that's usually just not boxing out guys and understanding where the ball is going to come off the rim. I mean, if they're shooting 3-pointers, they're not going to be under the rim. Like, 3-point shots are not going to just come down off of the rim. They're going to go flying out, because a lot of times they'll hit the back of the rim. So why the Pacers, I mean, that middle area right around the free throw line, that's where those threes are going to bounce. So box out and get to those areas. I mean, that's really not rocket science, but sometimes the Pacers make it feel like it is. Offensive rebounds, again, 13-7. Pacers only had 7. And then the Cavs destroyed the Pacers in the paint. And this is where it becomes difficult, because while that does benefit, obviously, the Cavs, that's a tremendous deficit. That's a 32-point deficit in the paint for the Pacers. That's a negative 32 for the Pacers in the paint that they're getting outscored by, which it'll be better in game 2, because that'll be an emphasis for them. But also, I think that's what benefit the Pacers, because the Cavs see that as a strength. And a lot of this was Donovan Mitchell scoring in the paint, but he was setting up Mobley and Allen on those lobs or around the rim. But honestly, I feel like, while that is not a deficit you always want, I do feel like the Pacers do gain an advantage somewhat there too, because silver lining, like, they'll have to, they think, okay, that's our advantage. Well, that means we do have to play Mobley and Allen together, where I do think that's a difficult matchup for those two to try to guard Miles Turner and Pascal. So, because it takes Mobley out from under the rim, and Jared Allen cannot guard around the perimeter. He just can't. So, yeah, I mean, the Pacers, while a disadvantage, also advantage, I think, because Cavs will see that as we can exploit the Pacers in the paint. However, that does require us to keep a bigger lineup out there, because that's our advantage. So, but it's also a disadvantage on the, I mean, it really is. It's a puzzle, I think, for the Cavs to try to figure out how do they balance that out. Final thoughts on this game. Again, I feel like the Cavs defensively, they don't have much of an answer for the Pacers. They don't really have the lockdown defender. They just have a really good big that's going to keep you away from the rim. And maybe that's where you see some disparity there in the paint, where the Pacers are having a hard time because Mobley is there and Allen is there in the rim, around the rim. They don't really block shots though. So the Pacers won the blocks battle 9-1. The Cavs only had one block. The Pacers had 9, and some of those from guards from the Pacers. So I think the Cavs are good defensively in the fact that they play well together as a unit, but in the playoffs, I think they can be exposed. I think you know how offenses sometimes look better in the regular season. I actually think the Cavs defense looks better in a regular season because of the length of Jarrett Allen and Mobley, where most teams aren't fielding two bigs like that. So it does cause a little bit of a weird, like, whoa, like this is different. We're not used to playing two bigs like this. How do we adjust to this? And the regular season, there's just not that intensity you're playing at with the playoffs and exposing teams, and the game plans aren't as thorough. I do feel like the Pacers do have the ability and lineup to really cause the Cavs defensive issues. They're just not a good matchup for this Pacers team because of the ability to move the basketball, because their defenders don't move extremely well. They're good defenders, but they're not like lockdown quick. I mean, Strus is not a quick person. I mean, he's pretty average, I would think. Sam Merrill's not going to blow by you. Donovan Mitchell at this point in his career is still quick, but not like extremely fast. Darius Garland is their speed, but Darius Garland also can't defend. So you add that back into the mix, I think they actually get worse defensively as a starting unit. So I think the Pacers have a lot of things they can expose against this Cavs team. Pacers second unit struggled at times. That's one thought that I did have. The times where they started getting to some dicey areas, especially at third quarter, it's the bench. It's always the bench unit. Like I can point to exactly which unit or even rotations they are. It's the Pascal plus bench. That is a unit that just struggles because it becomes iso ball. TJ McConnell. I want to say McGonagall, like the Hogwarts, but TJ McConnell is not going to shoot 3-pointers. I mean, he did shoot a 3-pointer. He had a 3-pointer in this game, but he's not somebody that's going to spot and shoot. Mathurin is not somebody that's going to pass the ball tremendously. He's a very ISO heavy player. Pascal in that unit is a very ISO heavy player because Mathurin's not really cutting a whole ton. TJ's not really going to cut a whole ton. And if he does, it's TJ cutting. Like that's a 6-foot guard cutting. You're not really too concerned that you're going to be able to get back and defend that at the rim. Ben Shepherd went out there. He's not really a cutter. And if he is, he's not much of a threat around the rim. Jarris isn't really going to cut either. If he does, it's going to be right around that free throw line, and he's going to try to hit the floaters or hit somebody else in a corner. So it's just like a really weird mix. They don't have it. What they miss is they don't have a dead eye. If you had a dead eye shooter in this unit and somebody that could also finish around the rim, like pretty consistently, which I think Mathurin could get there. And he did play really well in this game. And I think he's got to take that to the next level to really take this bench to the next level. But they really miss not having somebody that can just knock down threes and be a threat on the scoring side, because there are times where it's just the ball sticks and it just gets stuck and you're just playing in the mud, and this team can't, that unit does not defend anybody. So that is a rough unit to watch defend, because TJ can't defend bigger guards. Obi Toppin's not really known for his defense, and especially at the rim, he cannot defend at the rim. Neither can Pascal. Pascal's not really good defense at the rim. Then you throw in Shepherd, who I think at times looks overwhelmed defensively. He makes some good stands, but I think bigger guards like Donovan Mitchell cause more problems for Ben. And then Jarris just isn't there yet. Like he's still learning. So he makes some good defensive plays. Then other times he gets lost and you're like, oh, okay. Like you just kind of take that with being a younger player. So, but I mean, that defensive unit's just brutal. And I think honestly, the more I looked at it, I think you have to play Thomas at least 6 minutes, like that same kind of spell there. 3 minutes there, 3 minutes here, just to try to stop the bleeding. Because there's a lot of times where Donovan Mitchell is out there in that second unit. And then I think you got to match Nembhard and Donovan Mitchell's minutes. I think that's what's going to have to happen. And then live by the 3, die by the 3. That's the last thing I want to say. When you've got a team that is shooting 40 plus shots from 3, Can they blow you out? Absolutely. Can they win 4 straight games? Absolutely. But they can also shoot themselves so far out of a game. And I think that's what they did for a lot of this game is just reliance on the 3-pointers. When that wasn't going, Donovan Mitchell was really the only thing creating anything because Mobley doesn't get 20 points if Donovan Mitchell's not attacking the rim like he was. Because Mobley's not going to drain a bunch of threes. So he's gotten better offensively, Mobley has, but Mobley's not really, he's an 18-point kind of guy. Like he's 18 to 20. I mean, that's all he's really ever going to do against you. He's not going to be this guy that goes for 30. And nobody else really is either, unless it's going to be Ty Jerome or Darius Garland. So the Pacers have exploited some weaknesses in this Cavs team. And I do feel very comfortable in the Pacers' ability to continue to exploit some of these problems that the Cavs are having. So we will see. But that's just kind of the wrap up. The Pacers just really, took control of this game and never let up. They were in control. They've been one of the best teams in the NBA for the last couple of months. And I think people just slept on them and weren't ready. And game one's an easy one to steal because they're trying to feel you out. Game two is going to be a huge challenge. But tune in to our next episode because I'm going to stop this one because it's gone for an hour and a half. But I feel like the game ones are always fun because it's just you figuring out what this team can do and what the other team looks like. So just like Tyrese said, it helps now because I finally have something to watch to base my next actions off of in game two. So I'm excited for game two. This was a great win, a statement win, and the Pacers now have home court advantage against the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And if you have to go into Gainbridge Fieldhouse, you know how difficult it is to play there. I think they've only lost 1 game of their last 14 or 15 there at Gainbridge. So this is going to be a tough uphill battle for the Cavs. They can do it. They can win this series still. This could even still be a 5-game, 6-game series win for the Cavs. But right now, I still feel very confident that the Pacers win this in 6. And I think that's what they do still. So really, thank you for watching and listening this far into the podcast. If you made it this far, really, really impressive win for the Pacers on the road. Another hoop that they've jumped through and another checkbox in their checks box, or I guess in their list of checks. So really nice win for the Pacers. We will see you in the next episode where we will be previewing game 2. If you're not following along on socials, we are at the Pacers Fever Show over on X, Instagram, Twitter, and eventually TikTok. We are also anywhere you can find podcasts, so Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, anywhere you're listening to podcasts, you can find us by searching the Pacers Fever Show. And we are on YouTube, and that is the Pacers Fever Show over there. Like, subscribe, comment, also rate us on iTunes and anywhere that you can rate this podcast because it helps us find more fans like you, Pacer fans. So thank you for listening this far. We hope to see you guys in the next episode where we will be previewing game 2 of the Indiana Pacers and the Cleveland Cavaliers.